Hello, welcome to the Design to Thrive podcast for young people. My name is Caroline Brewer and this is my son Jack. The purpose of these podcasts is to really begin to help young people to unpack the confusion or worry, concerns they may have about things like changing school, going to university, relationship issues. And there's one fundamental point that we'll be coming back to time and time again as we go through these. And that is that we are each of us a unique expression of the same system. Our psychological system is designed to thrive. You're already awesome. We're all of us already awesome. But you may just not be connected with that at the moment. And that's the purpose behind the conversations that we're going to be having. So let's dive straight in. So this particular session is going to be looking at overthinking and that feeling of overwhelm. So Jack, could you start perhaps by introducing yourself to the audience and then saying something about how you experienced the recent lockdown?
Yeah, okay, so I'm Jack Brewer. I am a 21-year-old and I've just graduated university. I'm currently working in a games programming studio in London as a contractor, so I'm working remotely for this company. It's a 16-week long contract and I'm still looking for work afterwards. The lockdown has been difficult in various different ways. One, it disrupted university life, where what I was used to doing, getting up every day, going to university, working with my peers on our projects together, suddenly wasn't able to happen anymore. And that change was very sudden. Very suddenly I went from, I'm going to university on Monday to, I'm going home on Monday. So it was quite a lot of change all at once. There's quite a lot of dramatic change all at once. And then also I worked better when I'm working in a team with other people, and suddenly losing the ability to work with my peers was quite a heavy impact for me to take. But I got through it, and everyone will get through everything.
So let's just look at that that sort of 24 hours, that intense period. We were sitting watching Boris. It was the Monday and he said, right, okay, we're going to go to lockdown tomorrow. You were in Plymouth and we were at home in Weymouth, and I remember ringing you and saying, are you coming home? Can you sort of talk about how you were feeling? What was it like in that sort of that 24 hours, which was pretty intense?
Yeah, more like 12 hours, honestly.
Right.
Where it very quickly went from, we're going to stay in Plymouth to, no, we're going to come back to Weymouth. I was feeling really overwhelmed and really stressed at that specific point in time when Boris was like, okay, you're not going to be able to travel, you're not going to be able to do this, you're not going to be able to do that from tomorrow. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to have to work out exactly what's going to happen in the next 12 hours before the morning. So quite a lot of thoughts were running through my head at that point in time. What was I going to do about university? How was I going to get home if I wanted to get home? Did I want to get home? Did I want to stay in Plymouth? There were all these different questions that needed answering. And at the time, I was so overwhelmed by it all.
So how would you say you dealt with it? What was the sort of process, if you could share that you went through?
I think the most critical thing that I did for me anyway, that made me feel better about the whole situation, was break down the problems and only try and really tackle one at a time. Because when I was trying to tackle all of these different issues all at the same time, that's when I felt so overwhelmed and stressed by the whole situation. Instead, I stopped and I gave myself a moment to collect my thoughts, and I thought, okay, what is the most immediate issue? Right now, what needs solving? And that issue was, do I go home tomorrow or do I stay in Plymouth? So breaking it down in that way, making it into one task to solve rather than an infinite number of problems to solve helped to quell the feelings of overwhelm. I was still quite stressed, but the overwhelm started to subside slightly, and I was able to, with a relatively clear head, work out that I wanted to go home. So that if anything did happen, everyone was together. It was easy for everyone. If something was to go wrong, we would all be together, and it would be easier to solve it together than apart.
So I think one of the key things to make sure that people realise is that in those sorts of situations, that kind of overwhelm that you were experiencing is quite natural.
100%.
There was uncertainty. This was completely new to all of us. So we all had that initial anxiety about what does this mean. But what I'm hearing you say is that once you'd sort of spotted that, you could let your mind settle. You could sort of calm down to a point where you then recognised what was the next step. All you need is the next step.
Yeah, and I think a really crucial thing to sort of realise is even if you maybe make the less perfect decision in quotation marks, it doesn't mean it's a bad decision by any means. As long as you make a decision and you move forwards, then you're gonna keep moving forwards, and it's gonna eventually get better again. Yeah. So it's not putting so much pressure on myself to get the solution correct 100% of the time. Just to know that even if it's not 100% the correct solution that I chose, that it is a solution, and I went with it.
Yeah. So we're heading in a direction. We don't need to know what the destination, where that end is going to take us. We just need to know the next step. And sometimes we can be paralysed, can't we, by thinking that I can't take that next step unless I know.
Yeah, exactly. And then you end up in a situation that is worse than taking the less perfect, in quotation marks, route. Because you actually never left the destination. Yeah, and you never know where that step is going to take you until you take it. Yeah. So we can get stuck in our thoughts, and of course, that overthinking turns into a real sense of overwhelm, and some people would call it stress. So can you give us any other examples of when you've felt sort of overwhelmed in recent times? In recent times, there have been numerous times when I felt overwhelmed. I think everyone experiences overwhelm almost on a daily basis. It's just for how long you feel overwhelmed. It's sort of the critical thing. Key things that spring to mind is coming up to an exam. I felt super overwhelmed by the amount of revision I had to do because I felt like I hadn't done enough up to that point. I felt overwhelmed by the fact I was still trying to have a balance in my life. I couldn't only do revision because then I'd lose the balance that I had. And so that's a bit overwhelming, is like trying to balance all the different aspects of your life and get them in the right balance. It feels really overwhelming, for sure. So you can feel it almost on a daily basis. But I think the critical thing for me was to understand that by thinking about it more and more instead of just doing something, it would only build upon itself. Instead of actually having fun or actually revising, I was doing neither and worrying about both. And it was making both worse. Whereas when I stopped and just did one of them, 100% gave it all I could, then the other became easier afterwards. So if I gave fun 100% of my time, revision became easier afterwards. And if I gave revision 100% of my time, fun became easier afterwards. So the overwhelm subsided after me just choosing one to just throw myself into. So how quickly, I'm just fascinated by this, how quickly do you think you spot the overwhelm then know that that's not going to do me any good? it can vary day by day.
Yeah.
There are days where it can paralyze me for the whole day. It doesn't happen that often anymore, but it can still happen. I could be feeling sad for a different reason, and that can leak into my other decisions in the day. It can take me the whole day to just decide what I wanted to do with it. But then on other days, I can notice it almost instantly. I can be like, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need to stop, slow down, and make a decision, and then go with that decision, instead of paralyzing myself with all the different choices that are possible.
So that's just really helpful to notice that is how the system works. So this is back to that point that we made originally, that's how you experienced exams, that's how you experienced lockdown. So we're not saying that anyone else will have that same experience of those things, but just noticing that that's what's happened. You've got overwhelmed, then you recognize that that's how the system works, and we will talk about that feelings and what feelings are telling us. We'll talk about that in a different podcast. But just knowing that that's how the system works, and then if you quieten it down, then you feel resourced again. Is that what are the words that you would use to...
I always like to work with analogies.
Yeah.
So I think the analogy for me is that your body is like a compass. It always knows where north is, and all of your thoughts disturb the magnetic fields. Your thoughts get in the way of true north. So if you settle and you allow your mind to go blank, sort of in like a way where you just sort of sit, and I think a lot of people call it mindfulness. You just experience mindfulness. You just let your sort of true nature correct you to true north, and you'll end up going in the right direction. I think that was the critical thing for me, is like I just started to know that eventually I would do the right thing, and allowing myself to just do the right thing was what was the big breaking point for me.
So am I hearing you say that you trust the system?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So that's a really powerful thing for people to think about, and all we're doing is asking you to think about how this relates to how your system works. We know that your system works in the same way that Jack is describing how his system works. Your experience of it will be different, but the system works in the same way, and we can all trust that the system has got our back, that we are, I come back to it, we are designed to thrive. If we can let the thinking settle, then that overwhelm that we're thinking, it just relates to the overthinking. It'll disappear when we stop thinking so much.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Jack, at this point that you think would be helpful to add into what we're saying? Any other experiences that people might relate to?
Another one that can cause a lot of people overwhelm, and has caused me overwhelm in the past, is trying to help friends or families with their own issues. And it's quite overwhelming when you have your own issues and then also all the issues of someone else, because you've taken it upon yourself to help them. So there's numerous friends that have issues and numerous family members that have issues, and I think a lot of people feel compelled to help them and feel pressured to help them. But also I think that sort of overwhelm comes when you're trying to do something that isn't really possible for you to do, because really the help and support that friends and family need is just for you to be there. Just be a presence, and don't try and solve the problem. Just help them with their ability to solve the problem, because they will eventually solve all their own problems. That's again their system in work. Their system is also designed to thrive, and it doesn't need you to interfere with their problems or their issues, because they will eventually work it out. So if you're if you're sort of overwhelming yourself with what all your different friends are feeling and how all of them are struggling, then in actual fact you generally end up with a worse situation for all parties involved, because you've lowered your own state of mind by sort of wrapping yourself up in their problems and making their problems your problems, and you sort of act as a way for them to hold on to their problems as well. It makes it harder for them to sort of like let go of the problems, move on, move forward. So I think like that sense of overwhelm you get from other people's problems around you, you sort of need to understand that they are solving their own problems, and they are suitably designed to thrive as well. And just being a presence and just being there for them, they will work it out eventually by themselves.
Yeah, let's do a whole podcast on that particular issue, because you're bringing up some really important key things there about how to listen and how to support other people. But you're absolutely right in pointing out the key fact is that, because that's how the system is designed, everybody is designed in that way, so we can support people to see that for themselves.
Yeah, and I think the important thing also in tying it back to overwhelm, like the specific overwhelming nature of it, is that overwhelm is generally felt when there's too many things to process all at once. And I think the best way to deal with overwhelm is to sort of trim things down to only one specific problem that is actually achievably solvable. So if you're trying to solve other people's problems, it becomes unsolvable and thus becomes overwhelming because it stacks upon other problems in your own life. And this problem doesn't go away with no matter how much you do to solve it, because it's not your direct problem. You've sort of adopted it. So it's hard to get rid of that feeling of overwhelm when you're trying to solve everyone else's problems as well as your own, when you should focus and let your problems be the focus for you. And I think that helps a lot with overwhelm. It's just focusing on your problems and hitting one at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's draw it to a close for this particular episode. Thank you very much, Jack, for sharing those experiences. We would very much like people to interact with us, and there are several ways that you can do that. You can email either one of us if you have our email addresses. If you don't, then you can contact us through the website, which is www.designedtothrive.co.uk. That information will be in the description on YouTube, or of course you can use YouTube comments. And we would love to hear from you in terms of if you've heard anything particular from this episode, or if you would like us to discuss anything in the future. Jack, have I forgotten anything about how people can contact us?
I don't believe so. I think that is everything.
Okay, we'll see you all next time. Thank you very much. Bye.